Welcome to this session of Win Career Talks. My name is Vinod Arvind Dakshin. I work as a HR director in a Bay Area tech company. And I have a friend and person I know here, Sanmay Shivadekar, here with me today. He's alumnus of IIT Bombay, and he has worked in prominent companies like Johnson & Johnson, has worked in Google India. Right now he works in Google, I believe, Mountain View. And he works as a senior sales manager, handling agency work. Before I jump in with questions, Sanmay, I talked super quickly about you, but any other thoughts from your end before I jump in?
No, I think that's on point, and excited to be here, and happy to talk about any themes that may be relevant for the group.
Sanmay, you have a very interesting background because you have a degree in chemical engineering. Then you kind of worked in multinational companies for a couple of years. Then you switched to Google. So can you talk a little bit about what are the job options open when you graduate with a degree in chemical engineering? And what are the things to keep in mind when people are looking for jobs?
Yeah, I think moving from chemical engineering to Google seems like very obvious. No, I'm just kidding. So, I mean, I really sucked at chemical engineering, so there wasn't much that I could do there. But yeah, I think if I were to talk about career paths for folks um, on my batch or otherwise, let's break the entire thing up into undergrad and postgrad. So from a UG perspective, I think there are a bunch of directions that you can go to. Honestly, beyond once you graduate from IIT, nobody kind of checks what branch you came from unless you get into a very niche kind of an area. These core companies or core jobs that are available in either oil and gas or research. I've got friends who work for Technip, who've been working for Shell. Then there are those FMCG kind of jobs, which I ended up in. Those are more general management jobs. You either start in product supply, supply chain, and then move up and across the board. Then you've got the banking jobs that are there. Then you've got consulting, and then of course I think the newer ones that are coming up are in data analytics and um, uh, yeah, I think in those areas. PG perspective, I think it's a little more nuanced because the whole idea is that you already had like an undergrad degree and you would want to kind of get some amount of specialization there. So most people would either want to kind of go for a PhD or higher studies or would want to continue to focus on core. So a lot of folks ended up in core industries again, like Shell, oil and gas, and the likes. But having said that, there are also people who kind of made lateral shifts across the board in terms of banking and in terms of consulting. So it all depends on what your interests are and how can you leverage some of the things that you've learned in IIT and use that aptitude. I mean, chemical engineering, yes, if you end up in a core, probably it might help you for the first few years, but at the end of the day, it's just going to be how you chart your path in your career.
You talked a little bit about doing a master's program. So can I ask you to dig a little deeper in terms of how important is a MS or MBA after you finish an undergrad in chemical engineering? Is that critical to getting a good job?
No, I mean, I don't have an MBA, but if you ask me in hindsight, would I have gotten one if I had the opportunity? For sure. The reason why I say that is it's almost like a finishing school of sorts. So you can always upskill yourself. You can go ahead and build your networks. You can do all of that in your job or otherwise also. You may be good at building networks. You may be good at kind of learning on the job and moving different departments. So if you get that exposure, great. If you don't, it's almost like an opportunity for you to do a reset of your career. Think of it as a rocket. Okay, you'll have multi stages to it. So if you have to reach like an altitude of X, some rockets would have like just one stage and it'll just power through. Yes, you may reach there. You may probably take a little more time, and doesn't mean like in your career you may take time. It's just one path. The other one is like you'll have several small booster stages. So you have people who worked in, let's say, FMCG for 3-4 years, go do their MBA and then switch into consulting. So it's almost like an opportunity for you to do a reset. This is mostly for MBA. For MS, again, it's an opportunity for you to see if this is something that you'd want to do for the rest of your life. If you are deeply interested in it and passionate about the topic, then MS and PhD definitely make a lot of more sense. I mean, is it necessary? No. Does this give you more opportunities to evaluate, grow, and propel your career? For sure, yes. I think MBA also helps you immensely in terms of building your network within those 2 years immensely. And then you also get to kind of experiment with things that you would want to explore, but in a steady state role or a steady state job, you won't have the opportunity.
Okay, so let me ask you one more pointed question. Does Google value an MBA when it comes to hiring people, especially in the spaces you are in?
I think they value experience. They do not value, I mean, they wouldn't kind of put a premium on MBAs or otherwise.
Okay,
It
great.
all depends on the interviewer and what skills you bring to them.
Okay. Okay, let's go back to your days before you joined Johnson & Johnson. So if you were to look back and you're, I believe, among the very, very few people who got into Johnson & Johnson out of IIT campuses. So what does Johnson & Johnson look for when they try to recruit people from the undergrad programs at IITs?
I think it was, I had interned with them during summers. So that was a great opportunity for me to kind of understand what the role entailed, and even for them, for the folks who hired me and for the company to kind of see what value I could bring to the table. So I had interned with them during summers and then again during winters for a month, and again build networks, and they were able to see some of the stuff that I could do, and essentially that helped a lot. And to the extent that it's very rare that dual degree students end up with a PPO, so I was lucky to have one. And yeah, it was part of a LDP, so it was more of a supply chain led role, but more focused on operations leadership. So that worked really well, and I think what they were looking for is somebody who have a good mix of both business as well as technical understanding. I think those were the things that they were looking for, and having the opportunity to kind of demonstrate that over a period of like 4 or 5 months. I think that was a good window for them to see the work and place a bet.
So you also worked at Johnson & Johnson for many years after that. So when you look back and at the quality and profile of people you were involved in the hiring process with, so what were some important skills you were looking for when it came to an undergrad population?
This is true for most FMCG companies. I think they would look at your intellectual abilities, your analytical abilities, and but more importantly, how do you work with teams? Because FMCG, I think that's one of the critical elements that they look for, and I think cultural fit for most companies would be very important, more so in FMCGs, because you'll often end up in these companies managing and working with large teams, and actually managing teams who are much older than you. So having that EQ plus coupled with having the having an analytical approach towards problem solving is something that they really value and look for.
Awesome. Okay, let me jump into one more interesting set of questions. Your time at Google. So you got into Google a couple of years back. I think everybody's always curious, how do you get through Google? How do you get through the difficult selection process? So any tips for students there?
It's an interesting process for sure, and expect to have many rounds of interviews. But essentially, I think what they look for is your general cognitive ability and role-related knowledge, as well as cultural fit and leadership. So I think if you are able to demonstrate all of them consistently across different interviews, I think it's hard for sure, but that's essentially the way to kind of go about it. And it's an endurance run. I mean, you cannot have like one great interview and the rest okay ones, because you'll need to you'll need to kind of nail down all of the interviews to kind of make sure that you're in. So it is competitive for sure, but it's also very interesting because I kind of loved the entire process of problem solving during the interviews. So it was almost like you for 45 minutes you are brainstorming and problem solving on scenarios that you've been through, and for new scenarios that get thrown at you. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a process to enjoy.
Awesome. Now that you're leading a bigger team of people in Google Mountain View, and I'm sure you're also involved in the recruiting process. So can you talk briefly about like what the process is? So beginning with like, how do you even get your resume through the door? How do you get noticed? Is it through referrals? Then maybe can you talk about the number of stages when it comes to the typical selection process and how that typically looks like?
Yeah, I think the best way is to look at the careers website at Google, and our recruiters do a fabulous job in terms of picking up relevant resumes. I think the important thing when you're deciding on whether this role is the right fit for you or not is to look at experiences in your past that may be relevant to what is being looked for in that role. And I think that's like the make or break kind of a scenario. So when most folks hire for Google, they don't hire for the role, they hire for all of Google. And on an average, I've got my teams move like every 2 years to different roles within Google. And I think that's a great culture to have, because you take some of the learnings from your previous role and apply it there. So there's a heavy premium on transferable skills. Yeah, so I think the best way would be to kind of look at what experiences does the role require and see if you can uniquely add value to that role based on your past experiences.
How about the typical number of rounds when it comes to interviews, right from the time the recruiter reaches out to you? Are we talking about like 5 to 7 interviews, or is it less than 5 interviews?
It depends. It depends on the role. You can expect to have far more interviews at senior levels, to a fewer at more entry level or mid level roles. So I think it varies across teams. It varies across levels. So, but yeah, I mean, you'll definitely have multiple rounds for sure, and oftentimes you'll actually not just meet your hiring manager, but also meet with a variety of cross-functional stakeholders. So as I said, I think Google's philosophy is to hire for the company rather than for a particular role. So it's very common to kind of have people who are not your direct supervisor or who are not part of your direct team, but are important stakeholders, and their feedback also carries the same, if not more weight, for for a make or break for the candidate.
So is it like the recruiter reaches out first, then the hiring manager, then the stakeholder interviews?
It's just the recruiter, and they schedule all of the interviews. So the recruiter will probably have a chat with you, try and gauge your experience and the fit for the role, and if they find it suitable, they'll probably send it out for shortlisting, and then once you're done, they'll probably start scheduling interviews.
So what happens after the first round of interviews? I mean, do you still need to do further rounds of interviews? You get selected to Google, then choose a team separately, or how does it work? Can you shed some light there?
So you're hired against a particular role, and you'll need to clear every single interview. So it's an elimination process. So if you don't make it to one interview, you're probably not going to go to the second stage. So and the recruiter would know, and you would know exactly what role you're getting hired for. It's not a pooled hiring of sorts.
And is it like sequential interviews one after the other typically, or is it kind of spread out? Because I think because of Zoom and COVID, things have changed a little. So has anything changed in how it happens?
It depends. It depends. There are some folks who would prefer to do like 1 or 2 interviews in a day. There are some other folks who will probably spread it out by a week. In my case, it was spread out over a couple of months. So it all depends. The recruiter is fairly flexible. So if you let them know of any accommodations or otherwise, I think Google is definitely very accommodative and accepting of circumstances. And if you need any accommodations, they'll be happy to make it.
And Sanmay, do referrals help?
Yeah, they do. It definitely puts the candidate in the queue.
Let's look at it this way. So if, for example, there is somebody from an IIT who's an undergrad who's not well networked, and they want to again apply for these companies, is it okay for them to use LinkedIn, reach out to somebody from the same university and connect with them and ask for a referral? Would you advise that?
I mean, if they know or if they can build that network, I mean, just reaching out randomly to people may not land with everyone as effectively. So if you already know someone, then reaching out through them may be helpful for sure. I mean, the more important thing is the first step of that before applying is to understand what kind of roles will be more suitable for this person, rather than just blindly applying. And you'll probably need to do a little bit of homework in terms of understanding what are like 2 or 3 areas where you can add value, and then start from there and maybe reach out to the relevant folks and try and understand what the role entails and how good a fit it is for them, and then take it from there, rather than like, just reaching out to someone you don't know on LinkedIn and asking them for a referral. That usually doesn't land well. Like in most things in life, I think it does require some amount of effort and diligence, and you need to pay your dues there. So
Sanmay, great point, because I typically tell students that don't ever reach out on LinkedIn asking for a referral. Always make it a conversation in the beginning. Try to understand what the company's role is. And many will not respond, but with those who respond, have a conversation first, and they will recommend that like they can put in a referral. So that request has to come from their end rather than you pushing for it. That's probably a best way to leverage the networks and get a toehold. Since you've worked in Google India and Google US, any differences you have seen in terms of culture, how things work across both these locations?
Absolutely no. So it's interesting because if you were in any conference room at any office in Google, you wouldn't know the difference unless you kind of step out of the office and actually figure out which city you are in. All the conference rooms are exactly similar in terms of equipment, in terms of the environment. All office spaces are also like, each office has their own quirk. Same is for the culture. So there will be slight nuances in terms of like, you'll have like an eng office or your sales office. You'll probably have folks who are in and out traveling in a sales office. In the eng, you'll probably have a larger set of people sitting in office. But apart from that, from a culture perspective, there's absolutely no difference, I think. And that is pretty phenomenal. I think 5 years down the line, I'm still amazed at how they're able to kind of maintain a uniform culture across different offices. Although there are like individual nuances. The food in Hyderabad is amazing. The cultural festivals that we have there are amazing. But at the same time, the pet policy in the US is superb. You can kind of have all of your pets in the office, and yeah. So I think each office has their own nuance. But from an overall culture perspective, in terms of how they look at performance, how they look at career trajectories, how they look at managing people, I think it's.
So is it possible for people in Google India to have exactly the same career opportunities as people in Google US?
Absolutely, yes.
Is it possible for employees to apply for jobs anywhere in the US and be considered for those jobs?
Absolutely. And the same thing applies. The same principle applies, that if you can add value to the role, and if you can clear the interviews, and if you can demonstrate that you can add value, I think you can apply to any role. Google encourages that. So yeah.
And do you also have teams dispersed across the world, people from different locations being part of a task force? Is that common in Google?
It is. So depending on the team, you can expect to have like people in all time zones. There are some folks who are in Mountain View but have teams sitting in New York and in Dublin and in India. So it becomes a nightmare for them to kind of coordinate. But that's fairly common. And there are different teams that are in different hubs, and people work from different time zones and different locations. So yeah, that's very common.
So again, would that mean, Sanmay, that you'll have to flex across, since you're working across time zones, sometimes you'll have to do early morning calls or late night calls. Is that correct?
I think from a work-life balance perspective, I think Google is the nicest places that I've experienced. And again, I think there are workarounds that people have. There are different teams. Not everyone needs to be on the call at every point in time, and then people kind of make changes based on their schedule. So I've never seen anybody like supremely stressed out because they've got to be on calls like for 14 hours. No, that never happens. So I think there is enough amount of flexibility. There's enough consideration both from the managers as well as the teams, that they should feel empowered and they should feel okay to kind of set boundaries for their work hours. And I think Google definitely encourages that, and people are able to do that effectively.
So one more question on the differences between regions. So when it comes to Google India versus Google US, I mean, is it exactly the same selection process and selection procedure irrespective of region?
Yes, it's the same process. It's the same process, and as I said, it's the same performance management philosophy. Everything is the same. So there's literally no difference.
Okay, Sanmay, I come to my last question. Any advice you want to give to graduating IIT students from either the undergrad program, master's programs, in terms of how they need to be looking at careers or some learnings you've had in the past many years?
Yeah, I think if I were to go back and advise my 22, 23, 24-year-old self, it would probably be, I think, experiment more. And I think a lot of people think that the first job that you take is going to be your last job or the last vertical that you'll be in. I don't think that's true. I think for the first 3 or 4 years, identify 2 or 3 areas that you're passionate about or that you feel play to your strengths, and try and dip your feet there and see if this is something that you could do for a long period of time. There is no such thing like I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. If you find something like that, great, good for you. But if you don't, then it's okay to kind of say that, okay, this area or this field seems interesting. I would want to work here for the next 4 or 5 years and see where it goes from there. Don't be scared to experiment and put yourself out there and take risks, because both from a professional and personal standpoint, you would not have the luxury of doing that 10 years after you graduate, because the stakes go higher. So for example, if you are at a mid-senior level, and if you say you want to probably do something very different, people, I mean, it's not that you can't get something like that to do, but people will be a little more apprehensive in placing a bet on you. So you're better off taking those risks as when you're younger and when you're early on in your career, because that will allow you to kind of zero down on maybe one or two areas that you want to kind of pursue and then take it from there. So yeah, I think that was one pressure that we often kind of go through during placement season, that okay, I need to choose. If I get into banking, then that is my calling for life. It doesn't happen like that. Explore whatever you want to experiment with. Absolutely, the first 3-4 years, don't even bother about it. Take it as like an extension of a long internship. That's it.
And Sanmay, you also had a small stint as an entrepreneur, working in a slightly different space. So again, any thoughts around how do students get into the space of entrepreneurship? What's the right time for them? Is it like after they graduate, after they spend a couple of years?
Again, I think it's another vertical that you can go into, and as glamorous as it may sound, it is a lot of hard work. People see those one or two startups that succeed, but they don't see the thousands that don't. Is it a great learning opportunity? Absolutely. I think it's one of the steepest learning curves. You'll get to do a lot of different stuff, and it's a great starting point if you want to experiment with it. And historically, it was a little difficult for people to move between larger companies and startups, but now it's not the case. I feel people have, especially in larger companies, they've opened up to a lot of people coming in from their startups and coming in from an entrepreneurship kind of a background. So the risk is far lower, but definitely in terms of the learning curve, this is something that is amazing as an experience. Understand what kind of startups you are enthusiastic about, or what kind of startups or roles play to your strengths, and then go after them rather than just jumping for the heck of it, or just jumping for following the glamour behind doing a startup. Scope out your problem and then see if that is something that you would want to do, and then kind of approach this. I think that will be helpful for you.
Awesome, Sanmay. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. I think it's going to be very illustrative for students and people watching this video. In case they have further questions, are you fine if they connect with you separately on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. Happy to take questions and help out in any way possible.
Thank you, Sanmay, so much for your time. Really appreciate you connecting with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinod.